This is WOOL-FM 91.5 in the southern Vermont and New Hampshire borderlands and streaming everywhere else from WOOL-FM. Here's something to put on your radar. Peter Aguero and Ophira Eisenberg. They're going to be together at Next Stage right in beautiful downtown Putney, Vermont. It's coming up on Saturday, April 16th. The tickets are what strikes me as a very reasonable $15. Cheap. You can get them online right now, nextstagearts.org, or give them a call, 802-387-0102. I don't see any information about there being an upcharge for day of show. May or may not be, but you don't want to risk showing up and having the thing sold out, so get them now. Peter and Ophira, they've both been in the area before. As far as I know, though, not at the same time and on the same stage. And on the phone, we have Peter Aguero.
That's true, yeah. We both have been involved with Tom Bodette and Rich Corson and Rita Ramirez with their The Hatch, the charity shows they've been doing last couple of years. But we hadn't been on the same stage, except for we did a show in Burlington together. The two of us were on the same bill that night. But when we have done it at the Latches, we always end up missing each other.
So this is a chance for all those people who missed out on one or the other of you and have been kicking themselves ever since can atone for that sin of omission.
I hope there's not too much kicking going on. It's okay.
Oh, for people who don't know, Ophira Eisenberg, she hosts NPR's trivia show Ask Me Another. She's a comedian and writer. She's been featured on Comedy Central, Craig Ferguson, Today Show, and a regular host and teller with The Moth, that big-time popular True Stories Told Without Notes public radio program and podcast. And on the phone, Peter Aguero, also a strong association with The Moth, Story Slam host, Grand Slam champion, instructor for the Moth Shop Community Education Program, and a whole bunch more stuff. And I suspect that deep down you might be a theater geek.
Oh yeah, man. I started back when I was in high school. I was playing football, and it didn't work for me. I enjoyed the games and the team and everything, but there's something about the whole culture of it that didn't really sit with me correctly, and I quit playing football, and instead I did a musical. The feeling of being on stage was something that just, I don't know, it clicked with me really well. And over the years, since I went to college, I've been doing, I started out doing a lot of sketch comedy and plays in college. I went to Rutgers University. Once I got out of there, I did improv with a group called Chicago City Limits in New York City. And then I was in their touring company for 7 years, and while that was going on, I was doing a lot of stage acting, like off Broadway stuff, and then started going to the Moth around 2007, and telling stories there. And the majority of the work I've been doing has been live performance stuff. It's just it's great. It just feels good, man. That's definitely what works for me, I think.
Now, I read somewhere that you always hated watching improv. How do you reconcile this discrepancy?
Well, I still do. And I think improv is it's a really incredibly valuable tool for a performer to be able to, because really it's not about trying to be funny. It's not about anything other than being present and listening and being, just being right there in the moment. And that was really the set of skills that I set out to learn when I started doing improv. I didn't go to a lot of improv shows. I didn't watch a lot of improv. I wasn't maybe the best improviser in the world. I wasn't the best improviser to do scenes on stage with because of that. But there's the skills of, really being in the moment and being right there and just letting your mind go where it needed to go have stuck with me over the years, and they've really transformed what I'm able to do on stage when I'm hosting or performing.
You've had a kind of a rich and interesting and sometimes depressing life. Is that really necessary for people to be able to be a good storyteller themselves?
I think honestly, everyone's life is richer than you think it is. There's so many times you talk to somebody that's had an extraordinary life, and they just think that their life, it's just my life. It's just what happened to me. Your own perspective is just your own. But I think everybody's life is really layered, because there's a million experiences that you've had leading from the day you were born to where you are today. I think there's a certain set of experiences that happened to me growing up that definitely led to me doing what I'm doing now, for sure. Simply just because, I needed outlets to be able to express the things that I was suppressing, when I was growing up, and the stage seemed like a good place to do that. I don't know, performing gave me a place to kind of exercise some of those demons and learn how to laugh at them. Then, once you start to be able to laugh at the crap that happened to you, then you start to own it, and it stops owning you. And I feel like that's definitely what happened.
It's more than just public therapy, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I don't think it's fair to an audience to get on stage and really try to work through stuff you haven't dealt with. Like, believe me, man, I go to therapy. I have plenty of other outlets to do the real work. Mm-hmm. I try not to bring something on stage that I haven't really dealt with at all, because that's not safe. It's not safe for the people listening. It's not safe for yourself. You could easily trigger something in yourself to, that could be kind of emotionally dangerous in a way. You don't want to give yourself trauma, and you got to be careful when you're presenting things, because you don't know what kind of experiences people in the audience have had. You don't want to bring them back to something that could hurt them. But I always say that storytelling, for sure, is therapeutic, but it's not therapy. It's not where you do the work, but it can help you get past some of the issues. It's a thin line of distinction, but I think that the line's there.
And clearly it's valuable for a lot of people that hear the tales.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm talking about, what it was like to have antagonistic parents, or dealing with my wife having epilepsy, or just my own depression, or if I'm telling stories about that, there are people in the audience that have also had parents that weren't the best, or, a loved one that is going through, a health issue, or, everybody fights with their own anxiety and depression and stuff. And to be able to, the thing we all feel like in the world is that we're alone with whatever we're dealing with. Yeah. And it's really valuable to hear somebody else talking about it as honestly as they can, because then you realize you're not alone. It just makes you feel stronger. That's definitely a benefit there. Anytime you tell a story and there's somebody listening, that they're able to then just, they can feel like they're not the only person in the world that feels this way. They can walk out of there feeling a little bit stronger than they did before.
And for people who aren't familiar with the Moth or Moth-style storytelling, it's not all weepy, touchy-feely.
No. There's a place for that, just like, there's sad songs and happy songs, like the same band will play a sad song and a happy song back to back on a record. There's the best stories, I feel, are when, if I'm getting ready to do a show and someone says to me, are you telling a happy story or a funny story or a sad story tonight? If I can honestly say I'm not sure, then, because the best stories are the ones that, some of it's funny, some of it's sad, but it's all true. And the funny parts are funnier because they're in the context of things that aren't necessarily pleasant, and the sad things would grab us because sometimes they take us by surprise in a happy moment. Really, stories are about relationships. They're about the relationships that we have with other people, the relationships we have with the world around us, and the relationships that we have with ourselves. And there's a spectrum of things that go along with that. And again, some of it's funny and some of it's sad. And it's all over the map, and that makes for the best stories, because people are, like I said, people are onions, man. There's layers and layers. So if your story, it shouldn't just exist on one plane. It's got to have different layers too, because that's life.
And the improv training comes into this. I'm guessing that no two tellings they're all snowflakes.
Yeah, I don't often write my stories down. I might write an outline, maybe just like a bullet point outline, or maybe I might write it down once just to get it out, and then I crumble that paper up and I don't look at it again. So I think a story is a living, breathing thing, and every time you tell it, you're going to have variations, because you're going to remember different things. You're going to skip different things. There's going to be different additions depending on, how you're feeling in that moment. And being open to that kind of discovery and letting yourself kind of find your way, I think is a much more it's more interesting and organic than somebody getting up and reciting something that they've memorized. You know, not to say that there aren't great storytellers that can hit the same marks every time, and there's a good benefit to that too. That's a different kind of crafting a story, and that's fine. But I find for me it works best if I'm able to be a little fast and loose. I have a loose structure. I know the points I'm going to get to, but I'm not sure how I'm going to get to them, and that feels more real to me.
Now, you're an eloquent, considered, and considerate guy. You and I share a trait, though. We're both big, hairy, biker-looking dudes. How's that working out for you?
As I get older, I realize that a lot of that, for people listening, I'm about, 6'3", around 300 pounds. I got a beard and long hair and a lot of tattoos. And, a lot of that, honestly, was window dressing that I was giving myself, because I guess when I was growing up, I just didn't feel like I was tough. I always felt kind of weak. I always felt like I wasn't strong enough to deal with whatever was happening. So as time went on, I don't know, I started putting on things that made me, I guess, look tougher on the outside. I honestly, it's part of who I from far away, you look at tattoos and you're like, whoa, that guy's got tattoos. But you look close, on my forearm, I have a tattoo of a draw 4 wild Uno card, and on the other side there's a brain with a Ben Folds 5 lyric. No biker has that stuff. These are the tattoos of a charlatan and a fraud.
You're not just Moth stuff. I mean, you've got a bunch of stuff going on, including something that sounds really fascinating. Oh, where's the line? It's like the hardest drinking. How's it go?
Yeah, New York City's hardest drinking improvised storytelling rock band. That was the BTK band. That was a project I started. It had to have been around the time I started going to the Moth. So it was probably late 2007, early 2008, something like that. After I started going and seeing more storytelling, I got really interested in, what else can you do with this form other than just having people stand in a microphone and telling stories? It's great, but what else can you add to that? And there was one night I was walking home from a show and I was listening to Tom Waits' album, Nighthawks at the Diner, and one of the last tracks on that album is called Big Joe and the Phantom 309, and it's a story written by a guy named Red Sovine, and Tom tells the story while there's music behind it, and just something about the music added this amazing element to the story. It just it gave it a real sense of place and feeling. So I called up the musicians that I knew that were improvisers, and we got together in a room and I started telling stories, and they were improvising music behind the stories I was telling. So we started developing this project. It took us about, at least a year and a half to figure it out. And then what we did is we started inviting storytellers, and they would come in and tell a story. We would improvise music behind them, and then break in at certain points of the story and sing a chorus about what they were telling about. And it would turn a story into a song. And, eventually it turned into chaos. We by the end of, we're kind of on an extended hiatus now, just because everybody in the band got busy. But by the end of the run, man, we would have 6 or 7 go-go dancers on stage. There would be people baking cookies and giving them away, and there'd be one time there was a kissing booth. One time we had a live dating show during the show. It was utter chaos. It was like an adult circus, and I was able to put some of it up on YouTube, and it's just super weird. There's some great ones. There's one with my friend Edgar Oliver. I think that it's on the BTK band's YouTube page. It's I think it's called Swimming in Savannah, and it's from our quote unquote final show before we did one of our reunion shows. And it's a perfect example of what improv and storytelling and music and just chaos can do. It's something that project's something I'm really proud of. As a matter of fact, I got the band's logo tattooed on my chest at some point. So, so that says something. Yeah, that was part of the set dressing as well.
It sounds like it may have overlapped a little bit with some of the burlesque stuff that you're involved with.
Yeah. A lot of my friends are burlesque performers, and they wanted to get involved with the show too. I had a friend of mine come in and say, "Hey, do you want go-go dancers for the show?" I was like, "Absolutely, I do." And I didn't understand how that would work, but then we made it work, and like they became like these pillars on either side of the stage to kind of frame the stage really well, and just added this element of, again, like chaos, because there's so much happening on stage that you don't know what to look at. And it was like looking at a Where's Waldo picture. There's just, who knows what's even going on at some point. And yeah, there was definitely an overlap. I was really lucky a couple years ago to get involved with the burlesque community in New York. At first you're excited because, everybody's naked and it's this whole thing, but pretty quickly after I started getting involved with hosting and performing in burlesque shows, I would see how the performers were also telling stories in 3 minutes without words. They were doing it with costume and choreography and their movement of their body. And they're these amazing performers that aren't getting rich doing it. And they get an idea, they pick out a song, they make a costume, and there's a story there. It's not just getting naked. There's a story of someone who is going through something and joyous or sad or whatever, and it's really an amazing piece of performance art. And I've been really lucky to feel like I've been a guest in the home of the burlesque community in New York, and I've made some really great friends doing it, and also really been inspired to do work on my own from seeing some of the just unbelievable work that these folks do.
That was a great description of contemporary burlesque.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's still a lot of people that do the traditional, fan dance, feathers and glitz, but there's a lot of people that do, some really smart and funny and thought-provoking and sometimes hard to watch, painful things. It's definitely performance art. It blows my mind, man. And and they're doing it not for 1,000 people in an arena. They're doing it, sometimes for 40 people in the back room of a bar. And they're doing it because they need to do it. They have something to say, and they need to say it. And that, to me, honestly, it is really inspiring.
The metaphorical nakedness is more important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Daddy Issues, you still running that?
Yeah. Daddy Issues is a show I started doing, I guess, about 3 years ago. I had an opportunity in the East Village to be part of a storytelling festival, and they told me I could do whatever I wanted. So I was either going to just put together and do like a kind of greatest hits show of an hour of my favorite stories, or I was like, well, what stories do I have that are in a theme? And I realized I had a bunch of stories about growing up with and without my dad. So I put those together. I started working on it. Every once in a while, I'd revisit it and revise it. Like all on stage. I never wrote the show down. It's an hour long, and it just constantly was being revised. 2 years ago, I went to do it up at the Edmonton Fringe Festival. It was a great opportunity. I did it in Winnipeg last summer. This spring, I'm going to go do it at the Orlando Fringe Festival in May and the Cincinnati Fringe Festival in June. And that's really great because, for both of those festivals, I get a 7-show run and a 5-show run. It's hard to get a run in New York City. And when you get a run of shows, you can really get the material humming because the repetition helps. It helps you just kind of be able to hone the material. So by the end of the run, it's man, the thing's on rails. And that's hard to do in New York just because it's really expensive to get any kind of run. It's almost impossible. So I'll be doing it. Yeah, I'll be doing that show this spring on the road. Now, I've done it in Philadelphia. I did it at Next Stage in Putney.
Yeah.
Right before they had the renovations. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the space looks. It was a really warm space to begin with. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they renovated it. It's a good room.
Any idea what you're going to pull out for the show?
Matter of fact, Ophira and I are meeting up tomorrow to kind of work on the lineup of what we're going to do. We've done this before where, I've known Ophira probably for close to 10 years now, and, we both have been through ups and downs in our career and personal life and all kinds of things, and we've been close friends. And we've done a kind of a shows before where it's just kind of the two of us, maybe with somebody else, and we just kind of like banter on stage and segue into a story, and then just kind of take turns. And it's almost like a live action. I don't know if it's like an interview and like a ball busting session at the same time. And we're gonna what we're planning on doing this time is just find a couple of stories that will lead from one into the other. Thematically, that things can flow from one story to another. We don't exactly know what will happen just yet. Who knows? The night of the show, in the middle of the show, one of us might get an idea and take it off on another tangent, and that's just the way. It's really lucky to be able to work and do a show with someone that you've known for so long, because you end up knowing picking up each other's threads and knowing what the other person is going to do, and it's really all just about trust, and we definitely trust each other. So that's what we'll be doing at Next Stage on the 16th.
If you tuned in late, we're talking with Peter Aguero. He's going to be with Ophira, as stated, on the 16th. That's Saturday of April. Next Stage Arts in the heart of beautiful downtown Putney. More information online, nextstagearts.org. And you can call them if you don't do those computers, 802-387-0102. You haven't said anything over there.
I'm KMO. You and I have met. We had a beer after the They Might Be Giants show with Josh and David.
No shit. So, okay, yeah. Okay, all right, cool.
And I'm in the studio with Mark. I'm going to have him describe the garment I'm wearing.
Looks like a hoodie with a little butterfly.
It's not a butterfly.
A moth.
I've got two of these Moth hoodies, and I'll wear one until it stinks, and then I'll throw it in the hamper and get out the other one.
You're in Vermont now. You can keep wearing it after it stinks.
Well, I should say I wear it until my girlfriend tells me it stinks. But hey, we have been, Olga and I'm sure you know Olga, we have just moved to Vermont from Brooklyn, and we have been to many a Moth show. And we always go to the main stage shows, though. We at Cooper Union or the Players Club. But I've never been to any of the more entry-level shows. The main stage shows are curated. Those stories are, well rehearsed. There's a director assigned to each one. And I never did get out to any of the, the more entry-level shows. And I'd love to hear more about the sorts of people that, you can see on stage at those shows.
Well, yeah, other than the main stage, like you said, that are curated, there's also the Moth Run Slams, which now are in 25 cities worldwide at this point. And there's a theme that's released on the website, usually a month or two in advance, and people can, work on a 5-minute story. These are shorter stories. The main stage stories are around, 10 to 12 minutes. These stories are 5 minutes long, and people come to the show. They sign a slip, they put it in a tote bag, and we pull 10 names and at random. And those 10 people are the cast of the show. So you end up having any disparity of level of experience and skill and voice, and it's all over the place. So you might have people that have done this, 20 times before, or people that are pursuing performing as a career, and then people that they aren't interested in doing that at all. They work in a library and they really just want to be able to get up and say something. It's pretty amazing. With that, sometimes it's a minefield, because you don't know. You open up a mic in New York City and you're going to have any number of how do you say it? Well, just the weirdos are going to show up and take advantage of that. And there have been people that try to do character pieces or ventriloquist acts, or try to force some political agenda. But generally, people do follow the rules, and the rules are just tell a good story. It's pretty amazing, man. Out of those 10 people, you're gonna have the majority of stories are just pretty good. It's just people telling good stuff, and then you're gonna have one or two of those that are just amazing. Just a couple stories that are just mind-blowing and beautiful, and you can't believe that you happen to be in this room for that 5 minutes to hear that thing. And I've seen people bring the house down, and it's always sold out. I regularly host a show at the Bell House in Gowanus. That's about 400 capacity with seats, and it sells out every month. People eat it up. It's really amazing. So it's a good way to I don't know, just kind of, if you don't like the story, it's over in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? There's something pretty cool about that. And then, there are judges, and the people judge the storytellers. I always joke around that the judges have that job of applying an arbitrary number to someone else's personal life experience. So it's almost impossible to really do. And at the end, someone wins. And then once we get 10 winners, they do a grand slam, which is 10 slam winners. And then there's a grand slam champion at the end of that. And I mean, I won one of those back in, when was that? That must have been around 2009, something like that. It's all a blur at this point. But
way back in the early mists of time.
way back in the halcyon days of 2009.
So it's called a slam, and I've been to poetry slams, and a lot of times the audience is not too kind to somebody on stage at a slam. How are the audience members at the Moth slams?
Well, I mean, it's the Moth, so people are generally pretty polite, It's like very, very, very rarely will there be anybody doing anything like heckling. And I think that people show up, usually the people that come to a Moth Slam are people that, they've heard the podcast, they've heard the radio show, they've heard of the Moth, they just want to see what it is. And really all they want is to hear a good story. That's all they want. So if somebody gets up there and they're kind of eating it, if it's not really working, the worst thing I've seen the audience do is they just kind of put their heads down and just wait until the 5 minutes is over. And then they politely applaud for them when it's done. There's not a lot of snapping, and there's not a lot of, you don't get some of the stuff you get at a poetry slam. This is, people are a lot more polite, I think, with the Moth, because I don't know, man.
Well, I can tell you that polite applause can be like an icicle through the heart.
Oh, God, yeah. There's nothing like a golf clap to make you realize that you blew it.
Well, you've been up here to Vermont a lot more than I have, it seems like.
Yeah, I've been, I got to know Tom Bodette a couple years ago. I did a tour with him in Michigan a couple years ago, which I guess that's where he originally hails from, and we got to be friends. And he's, when he and Rita and Rich and Elizabeth started doing the stuff with the Hatch, they invited me up, and I've gotten to come up to, like I said, the Latches Theater a couple times in Burlington, and I've gotten to stay with Tom and Rita, and I mean, Vermont's beautiful, like it's really nice up there.
Is it much different than where you grew up? I mean, lack of stoplights and everything?
I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a place called Delanco, New Jersey. It reminds me a bit of Putney, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's down there by Philadelphia. It's on the Delaware River. It was an old town, all farms and stuff. So, I was growing up. It was a really quiet place. We didn't have a stoplight in my town until I was about 12. And there was a place called Vinny's Pizza that had a sign that said "Best Pizza in Town." It was the only pizza in town. So, I grew up in a real small town. I've been really lucky to be able to travel a lot in the last 10 or 15 years with performing because, I go to some cities, but generally I go to, towns and places. I get to hang out and meet real people and see real places, man. And, that's what I really liked about Putney. It was just good folks. The audience was fantastic there. And it's just, what a beautiful place, It's really nice.
I heard a interview with Louis C.K. a few months back, and he was saying that somebody who's got a really sort of polished presentation, an easygoing personality on stage or on a mic, and then they go to get into comedy, they might experience some minor success, they might get kind of good, but the real superstars are people who are really awkward at first, who really have to push through some lack of polish and lack of confidence, and maybe even some neuroses and things in order to get what they want to say said. And once they have pushed through, then they can be a comedy great.
Well, I think what he was saying there, from my point of view, I agree with a lot of that. I think it's really not about how you're saying the thing when you get up on stage, right? It's not really about how you're saying it. When you get up on stage, it's really about discovering what it is you're trying to say. And to figure out what it is you're trying to say, you got to try a lot of different things. Louis C.K. started out doing absurdist comedy. He did a lot of kind of weird European short film, but in terms of comedy, it was absurd and a lot of noises. And it wasn't until after he had kids and he started, telling the truth about what it was like to be a father, and in terms that everyone understood, but people weren't saying, that he started to have success. He started to find his own voice. It takes a while. It takes a long time to find your own voice on stage, and particularly, in comedy, it's not just about trying to make people laugh. Like, really, the best comedians, are the ones that they have something to say. They're commenting on, how difficult the world is, or how beautiful this thing is, but it's the way that it's what they're saying. It's not how they're saying it. Like, if you got somebody who's super polished on stage, that's all they've worked on is presentation. You got a beautiful car that just, you look at it and it's gorgeous and the paint job's great and from the outside it's wonderful. What if it's got a crap engine in there? Then there's nothing making it go. Like, it doesn't matter how good it looks if the thing that's propelling it isn't pure and good and strong. So it takes a while to discover what it is. What are you trying to say? What is it that you can say that nobody else is saying? I've always thought that, like, the goal of somebody who's making art could be anything: painting, a song, a monologue, a story, comedy, anything. The goal of an artist is to look at the world and then tell the world how they saw it. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you say that. It just matters what you say. So it's really just, you have to be true to what it is you're trying to get people to hear. It's not about giving them a really nice package to hear it. It's really the most important thing is, I need to say this. No one else is saying this. How come no one else is saying this? I need to say this. And that's really where I think that's where he's coming from with that. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I think of George Carlin, where he's just ranting about what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with human psychology, and how we're just a bunch of pack-hunting apes who are just incessantly cruel to one another. And when you listen to those, like, where is the comedy? There's not a single joke in there. But, because George Carlin is a comedian, this is supposedly a comedy act.
At the time, that was the only category available. What do you call a guy standing in front of a microphone talking? What do you call that? So I guess, they call that comedy. You can look at this stuff. I agree with you about him. You listen. I remember listening to. I had a bunch of old recordings by Lenny Bruce that I used to listen to in college, and like a lot of that, again, couldn't really be categorized as comedy. It was funny because it was dangerous. It was funny because it was stuff that nobody else was saying. It wasn't funny because it was a joke. And that's not to denigrate people that are great comedians, because they're saying things that are amazing too. But sometimes, it's like, you got this anger, you got this drive in it, you got this thing that's saying, what is the problem here? Why doesn't anybody else see this? And it's coded in comedy because people need that chocolate coating to make it go down. But like at the root of some really, really good humor and comedy is anger. And that's the seed where a lot of it can grow from. Like the people that are really groundbreaking,
in addition to those clips of George Carlin on stage ranting, you're just as likely to see a video of him at a book signing just talking to somebody, the next guy in line to get his book signed, and the stuff that's coming out of his mouth there is just gold, but he's not on stage, he's not in his performance mode. It's just, he's got a message that's what I'm
saying, man. That's somebody who just needed to say it, and it doesn't, it's not about how or where you're saying it, it's just he's got to say it. Once you figure out what it is that you're trying to say, you can't stop saying it. There's everybody in the world is usually being told to shut up, and like once you're able to find a voice and a way to be able to communicate yourself, you can't help but keep going. He was a genius.
So, pottery.
Yeah, I'm a potter now. I was having trouble with my material last year. I was putting together some new material, and here's the funny part. I was trying to write something after doing this daddy issue show for a while. I was trying to do something lighter, and it kept coming out as these like horrific horror stories and tragic, emotional, just really sad stuff. And I couldn't. I just lost a connection with the humor of things. And there's a million reasons for that. But I wasn't. I was in a place where I just wasn't able to access anything but the pain of it, and that's a drag and not where I should be as a performer. So my wife suggested one night, she said, you got to take a pottery class. I was like, okay, and I kind of dismissed it. And the next night she was like, have you registered for a pottery class yet? I said, no. She's like, I'm going to take a shower. By the time I get out of the shower, I want you to register for a pottery class. So I live in Queens. I found a place in Queens. It's a really good studio, and I started taking a wheel throwing class, and I took to it right away. There was something about, for the last 15 years I've been doing work where, like, if I make something, it's ephemeral. I make it, I say it, and then it's gone. You can record it, but it's not the same thing. It's really about being there in the moment. And, like, so I guess it really got to me after a while where everything I made would disappear immediately. You could tell that story again, but, like, it's not the same. It doesn't really exist in the real world anymore. So I started making these things. It's very tangible. Like, you take a breath and you make a movement, and the piece of clay changes shape, and you manipulate it. And you have to be of a singular mind while you're doing it. You have to focus on that. You can't let the stuff you're upset about in your regular life seep in there, because then you'll mess up the pot. You got to really be mindful and focused, and it just feels really good. So I just started doing that, and I just recently, just last week, started taking a hand belting class, which is more sculptural stuff, and I love it. It feels really good. I honestly, I never saw this coming. I didn't think it'd ever be something I would ever do, but like once I started going, I've been going to the studio like 3 or 4 days a week and just making weird mugs. I've been making these mugs with like big fat spikes on them, like what I call them weaponized mugs. Like if somebody's messing with you before you have your coffee, you just impale their face with your coffee mug. And I made just like these beautiful vases, but I would carve like the word farts in the vase, so it would be like this beautiful vase that you keep your farts in instead of flowers. I don't know, like it just to take something beautiful and make it something else too. I don't know. It's really been. I've been hustling as a performer for 15 years, and I didn't think there'd be something else I could learn how to do. I thought that was, the only thing I should be doing or could do at this point, and I was obviously wrong. There's a whole infinite world of possibilities that you just like take this essentially this dirt and you shape it and put it in an oven, and then it's not dirt anymore, it's a bowl. How the hell did that happen? And it's really amazing. You go to this place and see all the things that the other artists are making at the studio, and it's unbelievable. We're all starting with the same material, but the end result is as wildly varied as possible, and it's been really good for me. It's been I'm enjoying making this stuff. Like right now I'm just making stuff and I'm giving it to friends, and maybe at some point I'll open up a weaponized mug shop online, and people can get big spiked ridiculous mugs. But just for now, they're just kind of for me.
If you don't mind my asking, how old are you?
I turned 39 in November, so I'll be 40 this year.
Okay, well I'm closer to 50. I'll turn 48 this month. I find myself thinking all the time, oh wow, I'm just never going to do X, am I? I'm just never going to be X. And there are some things that I am not now, but I will be in the future that I haven't thought of, and those doors are not closed.
I don't want to be the cliche of the guy that's about to turn 40 and has a crisis in his mind and then does something different. At least I didn't buy a convertible. So, like, that's good. But, like, it's a cliche of, like, you get to a certain point and you're like exactly like you said, like, there's stuff I'm never going to do, and then you find yourself doing it, and you surprise yourself. And, when I was a younger man, I was really reckless. I was really reckless with myself, with the people around me, with my emotions, with my health, with my body, my actions. I did a lot of really reckless things, and as I've gotten older, I realized that I haven't done the things that I want to do yet, and I started taking better care of myself. and taking better care of the people around me, because I guess life has a different value for me than it did before. I didn't appreciate it, and I definitely do now, because I'm curious to see what I'm going to come up with, because at every turn I've surprised myself in my life. There's no reason I never in my life thought I'd live in New York City. I never thought that people would fly me around the country and fly me around the world to go talk to people and pay me for that. I never thought that would be something I would do, because I never thought I had anything to say. I never thought anything I had to say would matter. I've been constantly surprising myself. So, like, I know this. I don't know much. I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, but I do know that in 10 years I'll be doing something I never saw coming. And I want to be there to see that, and I want to be able to enjoy that. So that's, that's one thing I learned, and I'm holding on to that right now.
We've been talking with Peter Aguero. He's going to be at Next Stage in Putney, Saturday, April 16th. More information online, nextstagearts.org. Fascinating conversation.
Yeah, this was great, Mark. I'm looking at the clock now. I didn't realize this was great.
I hope it's okay that we kept you a little longer.
No, it's all good, man. If it was a problem, I would have jumped off. It's all good. Cool, man. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Have a great time at the studio.
Thanks, man. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.